All right. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, all right, all right. Do you think he's copyrighted that yet?
Who's copyrighted it?
Well, I said all right, all right, all right. Do you think Matthew McConaughey's copyrighted that? Like, do you think we're gonna get sued?
I don't know.
Can you copyright nonsensical syllables that vaguely sound like words?
Well, I'm pretty sure like Cardi B copyrighted like "Oturt" or something like that.
Of course she did. She strikes me as somebody who would copyright that.
Didn't Taylor Swift just recently copyright a bunch of like slang and sayings and stuff?
Probably. Good thing I don't use Taylor Swift slang.
Right. All right. Anyways, speaking of things, also, no, I don't have any way to bridge that.
Nope, there's no segue.
I was trying to. I thought maybe you would just come to me in the moment.
And the music starts again now.
And all right, here we go again. Welcome to History According to Hollywood.
Your idiots are back.
You know, we never introduce ourselves, and I feel like if we have new listeners coming in, they're not gonna know who's who. Well, they probably know who's who, but they don't know our names. So, anyways, I'm Dustin.
I'm Kyle. You know, we introduced ourselves in that vaguely cringy trailer we have on Spotify.
Yeah, and I think maybe the first episode.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. Okay. Anyways, this is History According to Hollywood, where we talk about movies that sometimes have things to do with history.
Every once in a while.
Okay,
Unless you're Braveheart.
Yeah, and then you just talked about how history was ignored.
Then you're just a work of fiction.
Yep. All right. So, Kyle, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about Last of the Mohicans, the Daniel Day Lewis headed adventure romance historical epic, I guess, is the best way to describe it in film terms, from 1992, based on the Fenimore novel. That's his last name. I can't remember his first name. Also titled Last of the Mohicans from the 1800s.
James Fenimore. Fenimore.
I don't know. I know he wrote like 5 books, and Last of the Mohicans is like technically the second one of the series, but like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's the only one anybody knows anything about.
Yeah, that was a novel from 1826, and this is actually the third Last of the Mohicans movie. The first one came out, it's a silent film from 1920, which was actually...
watching it.
Kyle watched Wings, and he's never watching another silent film.
Never again.
Anyways, this is so the original Last of the Mohicans was from 1920. It's a silent film, and it was deemed culturally significant and preserved by the National Film Registry. And then it was remade in 1936, starring Randolph Scott. And that is an Oscar winner, and I don't remember what for, but I do know it did at least win a Oscar. Pretty well received, also considered pretty significant. And as far as I can tell, this movie is based off of that movie the most. It kind of takes the adaptation from the 1936 film and kind of redoes that. So as you said, this is starring Daniel Day-Lewis. I did look at his filmography at this point, and I didn't notice he did anything of notoriety really before this.
Not yet, but this kind of starts his track to ascendancy, I think, because then he's in Gangs of New York, There Will Be Blood, Lincoln.
Right. He's going to do quite a few things later on. He's going to get a lot of attention for and a lot of acclaim for. But at this point, he hadn't really gotten that. And this only was nominated and won one Oscar, and it was for Best Sound. And I was reading about it because it kind of seems like one of those movies you would expect to be at least nominated. And so while I was doing the research, it was like, why are there not more nominations? So for the 1993 Oscars, which would be because it's 1992, some of the movies that came out there that year, Unforgiven, A Few Good Men, Crying Game, Scent of a Woman, Howard's End, The Player, Malcolm X, Larry Glenn Ross, My Cousin Vinny, Dracula, A River Runs Through It, Aladdin, Basic Instinct, and The Bodyguard. You got a lot of big hitters in 1992.
I see.
Quite possibly one of the more underrated years of film. Yeah, I didn't realize that until doing the research. I was like, dang, that's a lot of good movies in 92. Anyway, so only nominated and won one Oscar. So this is sitting at a 7.7 on IMDb, and it is an even split 88% between audience and critics on Rotten Tomatoes. It made $143 million worldwide on a $35 to $40 million budget.
And yet, Dustin doesn't like it.
I'm not a fan.
I'm just calling you out early. We're just gonna rip the Band-Aid off.
So we're gonna discuss some things, and you're gonna let's just get this out of the way. I watched this, and I was texting him, and I was like, "Man, what is happening? I'm so lost. I don't know. I'm so like the decisions that they're making just don't make sense to me." I was like, you love this movie?" And Kyle's like, "You don't?"
It wasn't even that you didn't love it. It's that you're like, "I don't really like this movie." I was like, "Oh, okay." That's like somebody saying they don't like Young Guns. It's one thing to not love Young Guns, right? But if you look me in the eye and you're like, Kiefer Sutherland, Lou Diamond Phillips, and Emilio Estevez do nothing for me, it's like, I can't help you. Like,
yeah.
Sorry.
I don't know, man. I do love Young Guns. But this, I couldn't get into it, man. I tried. I really tried. Let's dive into it. Okay, so we're going to open, it's 1757, and this is verbatim for what it says. The American colonies...
Should I do the background music while you narrate?
Okay, it has some great music, I will admit. Like, the soundtrack is fantastic. So it says the American colonies, it is the third year of the war between England and France for the possession of the continent. 3 men, the last of a vanishing people, are on the frontier west of the Hudson River. Okay, so I had to look up his name because... they go a long time before we say what Daniel Day-Lewis's character's name is. And even when they do, they call him like 3 different names. So, I'm going to call him Hawkeye or Nathaniel. I got confused at part of it, and I started writing down Uncas. Uncas is his, like, adopted brother. Well, I guess he's the adopted one, but it's like... So, if I say Uncas and I mean Nathaniel, I'm sure Kyle can correct me, but... if there's any confusion, if this is your favorite movie and you're like, "Oh my God, he got that wrong," I'm sorry.
If this is your favorite, when this is your favorite movie,
right, okay. Okay. So Hawkeye is running through the woods. He's chased by or chasing Native Americans. Oh wait, he's with the Native Americans. Wait, he is Native American. That was actually what I wrote down. I was trying to get an idea of it, and I was like, wait, hold on, what is happening?
You know, that's valid. That's a pretty good description of the first 30 seconds.
And I feel like they take a long time to explain the obvious here, which is, how is this white man one of the Native Americans? And why, for its time, it wouldn't be super out of the ordinary to cast a white man as a Native American. Like, okay, we're getting to where, okay, it's a little late, probably like 80s would have been the cutoff, but it's 92. So I was like, is he playing a Native American? And they were just like, let's keep him white. So they explained that he's adopted, that both of his parents were killed, and that he was taken in by the Mohican people when he was like 2 or 3 or something like that. So they explain it, but they don't do it for a while. I'm going to explain it from the start. So in case you were wondering,
the white dude do be white. There is no racial casting in this movie that we can tell.
But he kind of talks like the Mohican people. Like, it kind of catches me off guard a little bit the first time he speaks, and I'm like, is that allowed?
He does have that, like, that northeastern Native American accent that we all know, because what's his name? Graham, the super famous Native American actor who's in Dances with Wolves and Thunderheart and the Twilight Saga. He's from, I believe, the Canada, a Canadian Native American tribe, and it's that same cadence. Like, it's that super recognizable, like, this dude's Native American.
Or maybe that was the lady who, I forgot her name, the lady who played or voiced Pocahontas. I think she was from Alaska.
Yeah, it sounds like that. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Kyle. So I'm gonna try my best to just not scene by scene, but kind of describe the plot
chapter by chapter, perhaps.
Yeah, yes. I had a hard time kind of piecing together what was happening. Okay, so they're gonna shoot an elk, or I think it's an elk.
Yeah, or just a big deer. I'm not sure. But
he's got a very long barreled rifle.
Yes, a Kentucky rifle.
Yeah. You're gonna find out that he's pretty good with it. So the people of the area form a colonial militia, and they say one has to reason with these colonials to get them to do anything.
Yes.
This is from the British, who are wanting the colonials to fight on their side. Now, not all of these colonials are natives, but they're kind of split Some of them are native, some of them are settlers. So we're predating Revolutionary War, correct?
Yeah, by about 20 years.
Okay, so we're getting to it. So are they? So they're living in harmony, and I'm sure there's still issues, but I'm saying for this specific area, the colonial people are made up of both white settlers and Native American people of different tribes.
So nobody considers the Native Americans colonials, but they are a grudgingly accepted part of the frontier. The British aren't really strong enough, especially like the Iroquois Confederacy, to drive them out. Neither the colonists. They at this point have kind of reached a mutually assured destruction peace, if you will. Like it costs more to kill each other than it does to just ignore each other, and that's kind of where we're at with the British colonist Native American relationship in most places, most of the time. That's not a hard and fast rule. They still kill each other, but it's sporadic raids. It's not like organized warfare.
Okay, so there's a lot of moving parts here. So you were going to have, first off, they mentioned Fort William Henry early on. What is the significance of this specific fort?
It is just a fort on the British frontier that is one of the last ones to fall because the beginning years of this war, which I'll go into here in a little bit, are very pro-French in terms of military accomplishments. And so Fort William Henry is really significant because it's supposed to be insignificant. It's not built to withstand a huge fight. It's not built or garrisoned to withstand a huge fight. It's not considered super important comparatively, but it's where the French decide to hit for all of those factors I just listed, and that makes it important.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so essentially the British are trying to get the settlers to join their militia. Some of them do, some of them don't. We're going to introduce Magua, who says he's Mohican, right?
Well, he says that he is Mohawk. So that's another thing that's easy to trip over. So Mohican is only Uncas Chingachgook, Hawkeye's family.
You're going to have to say that name every time that it's mentioned.
That's fine. It took me forever to even kind of say Chingachgook.
Chingachgook.
Yeah, there you go.
That's not too bad. Okay,
no, it's not. You just have to
take it up the next time I say it.
At a time. But they're the only Mohicans. It's one of the under revolving plots. So the Mohawk are part of the Iroquois Confederacy, and there's 6 tribes in the Iroquois, and they're all allied with England or Britain or whatever you want to call it. So Magua claims that he is a Mohawk scout. It is quickly revealed that he is Huron, and the Huron are a tribe allied with the French.
Mm-hmm.
So he is a French spy, effectively.
Right, which is not explained and is very confusing until about halfway through the movie.
Right.
But I guess maybe this is one of those you watch it the second time and it makes so much more sense. But this is my first and only time watching it, and I was okay.
I
so
couldn't
this
help
guy's
but notice that you were interrupted early on by your baby needing to,
The streaming child upstairs did not stop me 28 minutes into this film.
Right. And I've noticed that a trend is that the handful of movies that I'm a little bit surprised that you don't like as much, I thought about it, and I think every single one of them, Kelson has interrupted you within the first hour, which makes sense because the first hour of any movie is like what gets you into it. And so if you get pulled out and then have to walk back in, you're like, what just happened?
I should just restart them.
So I don't know if you would have liked it or not, but I think you were only the level of confused that you were, because right when everything is starting to just kind of flow and you just hold on to your pants and go, you had to go pause it, leave, and then come back.
I should also point out that I was watching Kelson throughout the entirety of this film, so this was not one that I was able to just sit down and
it's
watch.
A very nuanced movie for as actiony as it is. It's incredibly It doesn't just throw things at you. It's here's this passing this, and here's this passing that.
See, no,
and then they'll all come together.
I need words on the screen.
I need a neon sign. Huron bad.
I need burning symbolism for me to understand what is happening.
Magua bad. Mohicans good. Nathaniel equals Hawkeye. I need these subtitles.
I need these things written out for me.
I should have just written you a glossary, like an index that you could flip through while you watch.
Like, wait, hold on. Page 3.
Hold on.
Okay, I'm caught up. All right. Anyways, Duncan, who is, I don't think he's a general, but he's like higher up. In,
I think he's a captain or something. He's like important enough to have stature. You know?
Right. In the British Army. So he's got a thing for this lady Tora.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm backtracking. I skipped a scene. There's a very short scene where Nathaniel, Uncas, and a couple of other people, like just kind of people like the colonial settlers, are kind of sitting around and they're talking, and they conveniently mention like how Nathaniel's single and he needs to settle down, and then we're introduced to this British lady, or not English lady, who is turning down her officer boyfriend and says, I don't want to be married. And I literally wrote, good thing our main character is a bachelor. I wonder if that will lead to something.
I wonder if that's going somewhere or not.
Okay, so Maud was leading the British down this path. There's a mountain lion. Nothing to add there. I just thought it was cool. I love mountain lions.
Well, Muggle like stares the mountain lion down, right? Isn't that a thing that happens?
I don't even think so. I think it's literally. I mean, maybe I don't think if he stares it down, but like it's literally on screen for like 3 seconds.
Oh, okay.
It just kind of is there and then gone. And I was like, ooh, mountain lion.
Yeah.
Anyways, I did catch that part. So he's gonna lead the British into an ambush. I like how he just turns around. And he's just walking, and he's like, 1, 2. He's like playing eeny, meeny, miny, mo on which officer he's gonna just attack. And so he starts attacking. The ambush happens. They're completely caught off guard, as ambushes go.
And you realize in this scene, British soldiers cannot fight in the woods. They try to assemble rank and fire, which is what you do when you have smoothbore muskets in the 1700s, and they get annihilated before they can do it. And then when it becomes hand to hand, they cannot go man on man against the Huron warriors. Like, they just get annihilated by them. Except Duncan. Credit where credit is due. Duncan can scrap, as it turns out.
Isn't that something that the British end up they end up losing the Revolutionary War? Not maybe because of that, but that's something that they struggled with during the Revolutionary War as well.
It's a recurring theme for sure. It's that at the time period, and it's not just the British, it is every like major army in Europe cannot fight guerrilla warfare, including the American Continental Army when it's created in the Revolutionary War. Like, that is not the style of warfare at the time. And so to do that, you have your own segment of the army that is devoted to that, and it is not British Redcoats. Like, that's not what they do.
Right. Thank God they wore the red coats, so I know who's who.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last remaining British are saved by the Mohicans. They knew that there was a war party traveling through. They were tracking them. They save Duncan and Tora and Tora's sister, right? Alice.
And the Mohicans are bad mamma jammas, buddy. That is something we also learned in the scene.
Yeah. I put this later on, and I could be wrong, but I don't think any of the Mohicans missed a shot throughout the entire film.
I don't think they do, but I think that's part of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Also, the Native Americans in general do not miss their shots throughout the film. The British miss all the time, and the Native Americans just pinpoint accuracy, which makes sense if you think about the context of why they would know how to shoot.
Like, I think the natives only miss when they're aiming at Nathaniel.
Yep.
There's a cool little scalping shot that's all one cut. A guy has hair and then suddenly doesn't. Like, it's kind of neat.
One cut on his scalp?
No, one cut. I mean, like, it doesn't cut away. Like, shot doesn't cut away.
I know what you meant, but the pun was right there.
Yeah, I mean, it is. You're right. It is one cut. He only uses it one time. Okay, I get it. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
Moving on. Huron war parties. Was this real? What was the conflict? What was going on here? You said they're allied with the French. Maud was going to make it more personal later on. But what's going on here?
Yeah, so this is actually a really good point in the movie to kind of give a history lesson before we get any deeper into it. So this is a conflict that we call the French and Indian War, that the rest of the world calls the 7 Years' War. And basically what it is that at this time, England only owns that East Coast sliver that we all know and love as the 13 colonies. Right. Everything else in North America is owned by either France or Spain. And the vast majority of it in the north, actually all of it in the north, is France. So France owns Canada, the northern plains states, technically speaking, and then also the Ohio River Valley. So the frontier at this time is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to give you any idea how little colonization is spread into the continent.
Is that why Canadians speak French?
Yeah, well, that's why Quebecians speak French. Yeah, if you go out to Vancouver, they don't. But Eastern Canadians, yeah, that's why.
Wow.
Quebec, Montreal, they're French colonies.
Neat. All right.
Yeah. So the French technically have possession of the Ohio River Valley. The British do not. The British, though, have 1.5 to 2 million colonists versus the French's 60 or 70,000.
Oh.
Yeah. So the British are like, we need more land. It's ours. We'll just, push you out of the way. What they do not fully comprehend is that the thing about the French is that there's less of them, but they are far more seasoned, generally speaking, in surviving. They have a larger trade network in the continent. They have more Native American tribes, maybe not as powerful, but more. They, generally speaking, are viewed more favorably by the Native Americans. The British exist on a get off of my land just because you were here first, it's still mine. The French exist in a we're not going to treat you equally, but unless we absolutely think we have to push you off your land, we'd much rather pay you in beads and take your tomahawks. So it's not benevolent, but it's far less just outright discriminatory, get off of my property sort of relationship. War breaks out because this guy named George Washington, who at the time is a lieutenant in the British colonial militia, goes to the Ohio River Valley, and he and his Native American allies ambush a French trading party, and they kill everybody, every single guy, including a French army captain. This is then followed by George Washington building a little stick and rope fort that is quickly overrun by the French garrison at Fort Duquesne, which is a far bigger fort and the one he was going to talk to before he killed the French people. He retreats. Britain uses it an excuse to go to war, and from 1754 to 1757-ish, the British just get curb stomped at every opportunity. They're overconfident, they're underled, they are undersupplied, they're cocky, and they don't listen to their Native American allies the way that they should, because they do have them, primarily the Iroquois Confederacy. And they march into one disaster after another. An entire column of 1,500 British soldiers is killed, wounded, or missing in one expedition that George Washington is also a part of. Several forts fall. Fort William Henry is under siege for the better part of a year and is under attacks for a year and a half. It's bad news. And this movie takes place right when things are the bleakest for the British. The French are definitively winning the French and Indian War up until 1757.
I didn't even know George Washington fought for the British, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that makes sense. This is kind of an overlooked point in history. We really think of 1776, that's when our country began. But no, not really. That's just, all of those people who were a part of declaring independence were from Britain, or I guess
they considered themselves British, most of them, up until a year or two before they declared independence. Not all of them, but most of them were firmly British. They followed English law. They had British social class by colonial standards. They were British until they decided they weren't. And I think that's something that people forget. At this time, the colonists think they're British. They might think that they're kind of the dirty stepchild of the motherland, but they consider themselves English. They believe they are governed by English law. They owe duty to the crown. And this is the war that starts to plant some of the seeds of dissent because of the treatment by colonial soldiers that you see by the British officers portrayed in this movie.
That was my follow-up question. The white settlers who are living alongside the Native Americans that we discussed earlier, do they consider themselves British?
They do, but they are so there's kind of it's not a throwaway line if you know what they're talking about, but it's a throwaway line if you don't know history.
No, I don't know history.
So
that's why I have you.
Yeah, we're gonna zip back to the movie real fast. The meeting where they reveal that Hawkeye is single early in the movie. Conveniently single. They also revealed that Uncas and Chingachgook and Hawkeye are very close to this family, and that they live out in the middle of freaking nowhere.
Right.
They're their own homestead. They come back with Cora and her sister Alice and Captain Duncan, and the homestead is burned to the ground, and everybody in it is dead, including the children.
Which I put down dead woman in the grass. Who dat? That's the lady. That's the homesteading family from earlier. I recognized the house, but I didn't recognize any of the people, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yep. So it's them. But he mentions that after 7 years indentured servitude in Virginia, they moved west. That most of the people living on the frontier are either dirt poor Scotch-Irish immigrants, or they are people who paid for their voyage to the New World by signing a contract to basically be a slave for 7 years. But then after 7 years, by English law, they are released with a certain amount of back pay in their pocket, and they buy land and they try to carve out a homestead. And the only land they can afford is whatever is the furthest away from civilization. But they consider themselves English, but it's kind of like, do poor Southerners consider themselves American? You know what I mean? Like they do, but a different definition than most of society.
Okay.
I would argue.
All right. Let's move on. So English girl starts to fall for white native man.
Yep.
I like that the girl has a gun. I like that she had a gun, and I love to see these things because we live in the whole like this is what a strong, independent woman looks like, and I'm like, no, give the woman a gun. Now she's powerful.
She is not the powerless like romance piece. Right. Like she's very much her own character with her own thoughts and her own actions.
Yes.
Cora is a strong female character. That is one thing that this movie unequivocally gets right.
I love it, man. I love it. Okay. The French are with another tribe. On the trail of our British and Mohican group. This is when I realized these night scenes, man, they're dark.
They are.
And I think I skipped over and even talked about it. It was directed by Michael Mann, who did Manhunter in 1986. That was probably his biggest film prior to this. Manhunter is a great film, but it is also very dark. And then he would go on to do Heat, and that was his follow-up. So 3 years later,
merely adopted the doc. I was born into it.
That's Christopher Nolan. That's a different director, Kyle.
What?
Okay. Yes. Anyways.
No.
All right. So the French and the hold on. What is the other tribe called?
Huron.
Yeah. Okay. You said Mohawks earlier. Mohawks?
Mohawk English, Huron French.
Okay. But is Mohawk and Mohican are not the same?
No, not at all.
But they are both English, on the side of the English.
Yeah.
That's not confusing at all. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is the point where they explain how Hawkeye or Nathaniel is with Chingachgook.
Chingachgook?
Chingachgook. That, he was raised from a very young age. Okay, so they're going to the fort. Is this Fort William Henry? This isn't Fort William Henry, is it?
Yeah, it is.
This is? Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're going to Fort William Henry, and Alice says, I cannot wait to see my papa. And I wrote down, my guess is papa's dead. I was wrong. So I will admit, because I was like,
temporarily, you were temporarily wrong.
This is how predictable the movie is, and I was wrong. So I'll put that down. I'll say it here. Yeah. Okay, so the fort's under fire. First seen from a distance, and then from within the battle. I love that, man. I thought that was so great because they hold it. They're like looking out across like a creek or a lake or something. Mm-hmm. And you just see from the distance the cannon fodder and everybody, or not, you can't see the people, but you can see the battle taking place. And then it holds it for a while, and then we go to within the battle itself. I thought that was great. I loved that part.
And it's brutal. Like, it's just, it's such a visceral, like, I feel like normally, like, battle scenes that are supposed to take place in this time period are romanticized isn't the right word, but we act like war hasn't always been gross and dirty and violent. And in this movie, it very much is like a visceral combat scene. Like, people are getting thrown by cannonballs. The fort is splintering all over its defenders. Like,
I do feel like they lingered a little too long on cannon fire, explosion.
Yeah.
Cannon fire, explosion. It's just a little too long. But man, those cannons are massive.
Yeah.
Did they have cannons that big?
Yeah. Yeah, they had things up to like 16 pounders. Like they would fire a 16-pound explosive cannonball.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, those things, like, they're as tall as people, like, or maybe even bigger.
Yeah, imagine trying to drag those bad boys through the woods.
No kidding. Okay, so our group's gonna sneak in through the river with the women in the boat and the men pushing it. I was like, why didn't you not just row? But I don't know. Maybe there's a reason for it. And
I think it's so if anybody happens, because it's super bright because there's so much cannon fire.
Right.
I think the idea is if the women are hunkered down and the men are all next to the canoe, if I just glance at it, it's just it's just a drifting canoe.
Oh, look at this drifting canoe going diagonal across the river.
Well, in the sense that if I'm a French scout and I'm looking for a British attack and I just see like counterattack and I just see an empty canoe, I've got other things on my mind. If I see a canoe with heads in it, I'm going to shoot at the heads, I think was the logic.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
So Hawkeye's reunited with his group of people from earlier, the colonial settlers and them. He says it was Ottawa in the French. Ottawa.
Just another tribe that's allied with the French.
Yeah. Gotcha. The general does not care about the Mohican families or the settlers' families who are out there, within the path of these war parties, and are in danger. They don't care. They want to defend their fort. So he's only concerned with getting to Webb, who's at Fort Edward, so he can get reinforcements. We're going to progress the love story. Nathaniel doesn't do a dang thing, but she falls in love with him anyways.
He's just not Duncan, is really in this scene. He's just not an egotistical prick.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to see the character dynamic between Colonel Monroe and Captain Duncan. Colonel Monroe, it's not fully that he doesn't care. He just firmly believes that the best way to protect the settlers is to hold the fort and maintain the defenses of the British Army, and he's willing to sacrifice a family or two to do that because he's a commander of men, and that's just an unfortunate truth. Duncan dislikes Nathaniel so much and dislikes the attitude of the colonists that he openly is like, screw him. I don't who do they think they are?
Well, he lies about what Nathaniel saw. Okay, so he says, or I put in here, I said, this is history according to Hollywood, not 18th century Bachelor. Then they're going to, are they trying to make a break for it? So he uses silk in his rifle, and he says silk will extend the shot another 40 yards. Is there any truth to that?
I don't know if it's 40 yards. I do know that at the time it's powder patch ball.
Right.
So you pour powder down the barrel, you put a cloth wad in between the powder and the ball, and you fire the ball. The faster and the quicker and the cleaner the fabric burns, the less it'll affect your shot.
Right.
So I don't know if silk would actually give him an extra 40 yards, but I believe that silk would burn a lot better than the other patches he has. You know what I mean?
If you're going for distance, I would think you would want more powder.
Well, you do, but you still want accuracy because it's rifled, but the problem is it's still just a ball.
It's just a ball.
It's not a bullet like shape thing. It's just a ball. And so the less obstacle you have between explosion and launch, the better your shot's going to go.
Right.
There are records of guys in a pinch in the middle of a firefight on the frontier not patching their weapons to be able to reload faster and shoot cleaner, and that's cool, but it will destroy the bore of your rifle if you're not careful. So
okay, so he's going to take out these I guess they're Huron.
They're just they're counter scouts. So they're sending out messengers. And he and Uncas, so Hawkeye and Uncas, are being the 1750s equivalent of tactical snipers. They have guys with loaded Kentucky rifles behind them. They're all loaded exactly the same way by these also probably somewhat expert marksmen that they know, because you would have to be to survive on the frontier at that point, the way these guys do. And they are tracking the Huron and Ottawa and other Algonquin-speaking scouts through the woods and picking them off so that the runners can get through the French pickets.
Okay, so this is not the Colonials escaping back out. This is them trying to send word
trying to get
Webb.
to Webb.
Okay, that was another confusing part. I was like, hold on a second. I was so confused because I was like, are they making a break for it? Anyways, moving on. I got confused. Nothing new here. Okay, so the messenger's going to get out, and then Cora's going to tell Duncan no. I thought she already did, but she says this is her final answer, and so she's officially said no. Hawkeye, or I keep saying it. Well, I mean, it is his name. It's just he's called Nathaniel throughout the movie. Nathaniel says he's gonna stay for Cora.
Yeah.
They do.
He also tells Duncan someday, I think you and I are gonna have a very serious disagreement.
Right. And then so they're gonna get it on. We're gonna move on. Nathaniel is arrested the next morning for helping the Colonials escape, and it's pretty obvious. Like, is that why he's being arrested, or are you mad that he stole your girl? Essentially, so he's gonna be like on trial. They're gonna say we're gonna hang him. He's in the prison cell while they're being bombarded by cannon fire,
by mortar fire.
Mortar fire.
Mm-hmm. So there's a line in there where when they first get there, and Duncan is like, what's the situation? And Colonel Monroe says the situation is he has bigger guns and more of them. His men dig 30 yards of trench a day while we keep our heads down. When they get within 200 yards, he'll unleash his 25-inch mortars and he'll blow the fort to hell, basically.
He did mention that, yeah.
And so they have 3 days. And that's kind of the time crunch of the fort, is that they have 3 days to get reinforcements.
Right, but it should only take 2 to get to Webb and come back.
It should, which is why you're confused when the bombardment goes off and there's still no British soldiers. You're like, wait a second. I thought, hold up.
Right. So they get message from Webb that he's unable to help. Or
through
says
the French general is the worst part, is they get the message while negotiating with the French for surrender.
Right. He does go ahead and he decides to surrender the fort.
And the bombardment is brutal. Like, if nothing else, watch this movie for the combat scenes, because the bombardment is scary.
Right. Maud was not happy.
No.
He says, white man become friend. I have no white man scalp. Okay, moving on. So we know what's going to happen. During the march out of the fort, after the surrender, there's a second ambush. This time,
this one is massive.
Yeah, much larger. It's a Huron war party. And they are going to absolutely massacre the British that are leaving.
And it's such an interesting scene because it's just a column of, hundreds and hundreds of exhausted people. And then one at a time, these Huron and Ottawa warriors just come screaming out of the forest, hit a guy in the head with a tomahawk or a mace, and then run away.
Right. So, but the rest of the column doesn't respond.
Yeah.
They kind of like they didn't notice it happen.
Well, and it's the thing that like you can see that like they hear it, right? But a column of hundreds of people is 3/4 of a mile long,
Right.
So what did I hear? And just because the 50 people around me know what happened.
Right. And then from both sides, they're going to get flanked, and now everyone knows what's happening.
And
everyone's
musket
being
fire
killed.
just erupts out of the forest.
So Maud was going to kill Monroe, which is what his goal was. He does mention earlier to the French monsieur that he wants to remove his heart.
Yes.
And he does so.
He does.
Gosh dang it, I clicked again. Okay. So Maud kills Monroe.
It's all clicking.
It's all clicking. It's all clicking. I'm getting it now. Everything's we're figuring it out. Okay.
But Magua, after Monroe cuts down more than his fair share of Native American warriors, Magua ambushes him on his horse, basically, and cuts his heart out. And tells him before while he's laying there, still alive, because when you get your heart cut out, if you don't immediately pass out from shock, there is a brief second where you're still conscious, and he's like, hey, I'm going to kill your daughters, and there's nothing you can do about it. Have fun in hell.
Right. Yeah, it's dark, man.
Oh, yeah. Magua is a villain, dude.
Nathaniel is going to go all hero mode here. So he's in handcuffs. He's going to free himself. He's going to get a rifle. He's going to kill multiple of the Huron attackers. He's going to save Alice and Cora. So it's who is it in here? And who's escaping in the canoes? Duncan, Alice,
a couple of
Cora.
British soldiers.
Are there British soldiers?
Just like 2, yeah.
Okay. And then Uncas is with them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uncas even goes to Duncan's canoe to help them row. Right. Because you have Duncan's the only able-bodied soldier who escapes, and he drags 2 wounded guys with him in the canoe, is kind of the implication. And so he's slower than the canoe's chasing them. And so Uncas, in a crazy act of physical prowess, jumps off of a speeding canoe, dives underwater, and pops up next to another one, climbs in it, and starts rowing, which is just a super cool testament to like how in shape these people would have been.
Yeah. They escape by going down a waterfall and then sending their canoes down another waterfall and escaping over to the side to try to throw them off the trail. This scene here is the one that you and I argued about this. Not argued, but we're in a very big disagreement about it. Yeah. So we're behind a waterfall. The Huron party has arrived, has tracked them to this area,
which is impressive considering that they sent their canoes down said waterfall.
And that they knew it was a fake, or it was a fake out. Okay, so the Huron war party that you just saw cut the heart out of the highest ranking official. Nathaniel says, "I'll come back for you. I will find you." And then he dives down the waterfall while leaving Duncan, Alice, and Cora to be at the mercy of these savage warriors that are angry and hostile and wanting to kill everyone against them. What?
Okay, well, here's the deal, right? Is that one thing you can't forget in this movie is the audience knows what Magua's intentions are with the daughters. Hawkeye and Uncas do not, Like, they don't know that Magua's anything other than a war leader. They don't know that he has a personal vendetta. And in the culture of the time, in Native American warfare, if things were worth money, you didn't kill them straight off. So if you have a British officer and you have these 2 clearly highborn British ladies, and you're at war with Britain, the odds of you killing them are much lower than these enemy warriors. And so the logic is that we don't have any powder, so we can't fight. There's only 3 of us, so we can't fight in a melee. If we fight and we piss them off, we're all going to die. Every single one. You are not physically fit enough to jump off this waterfall and survive.
But
we barely
the chances of it, that's what I'm saying. Like, I would rather take my chances with the waterfall than I would with the warriors.
I think again, it is, I agree that it's a miscalculation, but I think it's an intentional plot miscalculation because it shows that, like, Uncas and Chingachgook and Hawkeye do not understand the sociopath that is Magua, right? Like, he is going against everything Native Americans stand for. Like, because in his discussion with the Sachem later, the Sachem's like, "What is wrong with you? You're crazy."
So, okay, that's basically where we go to. It does not take them long. Immediately, they're on the trail. Okay.
Yes.
Immediately, they're after him. They're following them. She breaks a branch to mark the trail in the middle of the forest. You're gonna see a broken branch.
You'd be surprised, man.
No, there's no way. That could have been a mountain lion. That could have been a fat raccoon. That could have been a mongoose.
Yeah, but not at 5 foot high though. I think is the thing.
That's maybe the squirrel fell out of the tree, bro. There's no way.
I'm just saying that, believe it or not, that is a legitimate tracking technique. Like, that is what you do. Is you just look for things that are broken that shouldn't be broken.
Why would you not drop something? Why would you not drop? Like,
I don't know.
Tear that long, completely unnecessary dress. Because tear a part of it.
And if they notice that you're leaving things, they will kill you.
You just traveled through a waterfall. Your dress is probably torn anyways. Just leave some cloth laying around. Breaking a branch. I'm like, come on.
I'm sorry that you were threatened by the tracking abilities of fur hunters and Native Americans in the 1750s.
I understand. Like, but that is obviously.
That is how that works.
But there's no way.
That is how that works.
All right, moving on. Magua's going to take the prisoners back to the village, put them in front of the leader of his people, and be like, "Look what I brought you. Let's kill him." The leader is then going to start to say things, and then Nathaniel's like, "Wait." He just marches down the middle of the freaking village. I'm like, "What? This was your plan? Why would you not just stay with them then? Why would you not stay with if you're just going to turn yourself in anyways?
Well,
why not just stay with him the whole time?
I think the key is that he's going to negotiate, and if he goes the way that he goes, he has to put up with a certain amount of physical abuse, but they won't kill him because it's against tribal law. If he's fighting, they kill him.
But if he would have, that's what I'm saying, if he would have submitted himself as a prisoner when the rest of them were taken, you would have killed him?
They would have killed him.
Why?
You're an enemy, because he's an enemy warrior.
So is Duncan.
Yeah, but Duncan's worth money. Hawkeye's not worth anything.
Oh, man. Oh, I did not like this part. I thought this was the dumbest part of the movie. I was like, this doesn't make any logical sense to me. All right. So where are we at? I'm all worked up now. Okay,
so,
here we go.
Yeah, I got you. So Hawkeye carrying the belt of his people, like the time record of his family's declining tribe, walks into the village, takes 3 increasingly difficult hits to like his arm, his back, and then the back of his head to endure the pain tribute, which I have read was a thing that sometimes happened, especially in times of war. It's like, to prove that your intentions are pure, we'll try to provoke you, and if you're not provoked, you can speak, sort of deal. So he goes to the Sachem, and he has Duncan translate into French, because since the Huron are allied with the French,
right,
most of the Huron speak French enough. And so he argues that Magua, after what he has seen and what he has heard in this gathering, that Magua is just a rogue leader who is dishonoring the traditions of the Huron people in his hatred. And he tells the Sachem that Magua has been twisted by the white man's greed and the white man's violence, but that he would become what twisted him. And this is a really, really good cultural history point that the movie makes, is that part of the ongoing conflict with Native Americans and colonists, and then Native Americans and settlers, and then Native Americans and the U.S. government, is that they view the world and evil completely differently. Like, they vehemently think that what the other one stands for is chaos. So this is Hawkeye being like, do not reward this man. This man may have brought you great victories, but he has brought them to you at the cost of like the values that your people hold dear.
He sold his soul.
Yeah, he has become the very demon that he says he will annihilate. Like,
right.
And the Sachem seems to find wisdom in this, and he goes, we'll meet in the middle. We will kill the dark-haired girl, so Cora, to hopefully like temper the hatred in Magua, to give him his blood money, basically.
Right.
We will let him take the blonde girl, Alice, who is younger, to replace the wife that left him, to try to show him love again. We will let the English go because Magua just massacred this English retreating army, and if we do not let the English officer go, we're all gonna die, is kind of what the Sachem thinks. And so, with this situation being what it is, and Hawkeye being in love with Cora for silly 1990s movie reasons, he goes,
She's
take
pretty.
me. He tells Duncan, tell the Sachem to take me, a great warrior, instead. And Hawkeye is a great, everybody knows who this man is. Like, that becomes clear when he's in the Huron camp. Is they're like, oh, this dude, the long rifle. Yeah, we know him. Duncan, craptastic individual though he's been for the rest of the movie, in the heat of the moment, instead of telling the Sachem to take Hawkeye, Duncan tells the Sachem to burn him alive instead.
To take him instead, yeah. Does he say to burn himself? Or does he say just to take me?
Well, he said, the Sachem says that we will give the dark woman, so Cora, the dark-haired girl, to our fires. So sacrificial death. So Duncan knows what he's getting into. He speaks French. And he offers himself up because he knows that he cannot get Cora and Alice back alive, but Hawkeye probably can.
Yeah. Okay. So that's going to happen, man. So Cora, which, if you're going to try to make it more, in my opinion, if you were trying to make it more dramatic, I would have had Cora be the one that was taken, Alice returned to Hawkeye, and then that makes more sense for them to go after Magua, and then to free Cora.
I think from a drama perspective, so not like a film making perspective, but like a drama perspective, Alice is innocence, and so it is. She's naivety and she's like fragile beauty, and she is something precious to Uncas, who is the last of his people. And so I think it's the the movie is about good men doing good things simply because they are good people. Like that is Hawkeye and Uncas and Chingachgook. They do what they do because they're good people. Like, and so they're going to go after whoever they take. But I think dramatically the reason they chose Alice is the same reason it's the dog who dies at the end of Old Yeller. You know, it's the same reason it's the death of the young child that drives a serial killer to being a serial killer. Like, it's the classic, like, who is the most innocent, least able to defend themselves character that we have?
Right.
Let the villain take her.
I guess, yeah. We just didn't know. I don't know. We just didn't. Alice doesn't have nearly as much character as Cora does at this point.
And Uncas doesn't have as much character as Hawkeye. So I get what you're saying.
Right.
But I think it's to show this secondary passion that has been growing. Like, this is not only the tale of Hawkeye in love. This is the tale of Hawkeye and Uncas in love. And Uncas has
obviously they're not in love. They're brothers.
No, they're both in love with women because it's the 90s and
yes.
But Uncas, who has been rational and level-headed and barely speaks throughout the movie, he's kind of just like the silent like foil to Hawkeye.
I like Uncas.
Looks in his father's eyes and immediately sprints after this war party of like 10 people to go get the woman he loved, which is a pretty powerful little, like, you know, who has never made a bad decision, am about to make the worst decision of my entire life to go save this person.
Not only that, like, he's the only one, because Nathaniel's adopted, essentially.
He is the last of his people.
Uncas is the only one who could pass on, whatever you call it, to continue the bloodline of the Mohican people.
Well, because Chingachgook is visibly like 50.
He's old.
Like, he's not ancient, but he's old. You know, like,
I don't know.
So Uncas runs after the war party. Hawkeye has to get Cora, and he puts Duncan out of his misery. He shoots him in the head.
Right.
So he doesn't burn to death. And then Chingachgook and Cora and Hawkeye also go after the war party.
So there's a little bit of a gap. Another thing that I didn't think was done great is, like, Uncas could have just waited a second.
He could have.
Because literally, like, there's not a big gap. There's a couple things going to happen here. Okay, Uncas is going to ambush Magua and his party. And
Uncas is going to kill, like, 3 people to get to Magua, number 1. So, you know.
And then they're going to have kind of a respectful, it's going to be one-on-one, mano-a-mano. We're going to fight this out.
And it is short. And it is bad.
Magua gets the best of him.
And you quickly realize that Uncas might be a bad mamma jamma, but he's a bad mamma jamma in his early 20s who is more angry than he is skilled. And Magua is a sociopath who has killed 100 men and is about to make it 101.
So this happens immediately after Alice is standing on this, like, large flat rock on the side of the cliff. She, like, looks around. She looks at Magua, and there's not a word spoken, but you know what's going to happen. Magua puts his knife away, reaches out his hand, and then she jumps.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting that Magua does not kill Uncas with anything that resembles honor or mercy.
Right.
He gashes him and stabs him a handful of times, and then holds him up and slowly, by his ponytail, and then slowly slits his throat and then slides him off a cliff. And
he also, he kind of looks like he's, like, taken aback whenever some of the blood starts out, like, towards his face.
Yeah, he's like
this gross.
Yikes.
Okay, so that's gonna happen. Alice is gonna jump off the cliff, and then here's our party. We're here. We were saving the day, and it's like, if you would have just waited a minute, just a minute.
Romeo and Juliet, buddy.
Why did Alice not try to run? Why did she not try to run? You're like, they would have killed her. Okay.
Well, I don't know if you noticed before. I don't know if you noticed before. Alice tries to commit suicide before they even get to Fort William Henry, and Uncas saves her.
Was that with the pistol?
No, she almost jumps off the waterfall. So it's either before Fort William Henry or after, but it's really brief, and if you look away, you miss it. But she starts to jump. Away. Yeah, shocker. She starts to go off the cliff, and Uncas saves her.
Okay. Well, anyways, he doesn't save her this time because he's dead.
I'm not saying it's logical, but emotionally it makes more sense if you see that scene.
I guess, man. I'm just like, okay, you could have waited. It's just whatever. Okay. Chingachgook is going to...
There you go.
He's going to be the one to kill Magua, which I thought was nice, because everyone is suspecting Nathaniel to be the one to do it, and he's not. He's like, you killed my son, prepare to die.
And he puts him down, man.
Puts him down, man.
As brutally as Uncas loses to Magua is how brutal Magua loses to Chingachgook. You're like, oh, so you're why you're the last of the Mohicans. Okay, right. I see you.
And then Korra and Nathaniel embrace like they weren't running side by side this whole time up this mountain.
Yeah.
Like they act like, that's what I'm saying. Like, why was it whatever. It's the end of the movie. Death ceremony time. And roll credits. Here we are. Okay, so that was Last of the Mohicans. Kyle, what do you think overall?
I think from an enjoyment perspective, like I think personally that it is a 7.5 movie, like out of 10. There's flaws.
Yeah.
It's too dark at times, not plot wise, but like visibly too dark. There's some 90s like smut in there for sure. There's that Romeo and Juliet thing with Uncas and Alice.
The whole romance, man.
That is powerful but fleeting. You know, it's like, okay, I get what you're going for, but whatever. However, I think that the character drivenness of it, the fact that these are by all intents and purposes normal, quote unquote, people that are brought into this thing so outside of their ability to affect it is powerful. I think for me personally, anytime you take a moment in history and you boil it down to the lives of a handful of people who aren't presidents or generals or people with the actual power to change the course of events, it's powerful because Hawkeye and Uncas and Chingachgook and Alice and Korra and Duncan go through all of this and lose their lives in some instances, lose their brother, their sister, their loved one. What changes? You know, like I think that's the power of it, is that in the grand scheme of things, nothing changed.
Right.
So you have, to me, it's a very human movie from that insight. Like, these people can suffer and die and fight and kill. And if you're only looking at it from a top-down perspective, it didn't mean crap. So that's why I give it like a 7.5. Personal enjoyment. Historically, I'll give it an 8. The novel's not an 8. I've read the novel. It's like a 5. It's super 1830s interpretation of Native Americans and settlers. But the movie, I'll give it an 8. It's really close, and it's one of those, it's not perfect, but you learn a lot more correct than incorrect by watching this movie. So
yeah. I tried to like it, man. I really did.
It's okay. I don't like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's true.
And I've gotten the same response from most people that you got for this. It's like, why? And I'm like, why do you like it? Like,
yeah, I just didn't think there was a lot there to bite into. I'm not a big.
It's because I wasn't sitting next to you going da 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 da.
I think if you would have helped it, if I would have watched this with you, you could have explained stuff. I think it would have been better. Would I've liked it? I don't know. But I wouldn't have disliked it. I wouldn't have disliked it as much as I do.
I think confusion breeds dislike. I think that's like if you watch a movie and you don't understand what's going on, you're gonna actively dislike it. You know,
and like I told you, man, I don't know anything about this time period. You know,
well now you do.
Yeah, I know more now. That's a plus.
There you go.
Yeah, if I don't know, I do like a 5, maybe.
Okay,
5 out of 10. It wasn't horrible.
Cool. I just took like 5 years off my life with that, but that's fine. It's cool.
Well, it's better than Wyatt Earp. I'll give it that.
Yeah. I'm glad you made that very clear when you were criticizing it. You're like, I just want to bring out, I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's good. And I'm like, okay, all right.
I may put it like a half notch above Napoleon.
There you go. I think you got to admit it's better than Napoleon, if only because Napoleon's about Napoleon. So its failures are just greater because how did you mess up a movie about Napoleon?
Right. I do wish this was part of history, or not a part of it. Well, I wish this was a part of history. I wish this was a part of, I wish we learned more about this in school. Like, I mean, it kind of really, and I feel like that'd be beneficial for people now to understand, like, hey, not only were there people here, like we all know that, but there were events happening before the Declaration of Independence, like before the Revolutionary War.
Oh yeah,
and we kind of think of that as like the start of our country, and I guess technically it is, but there's a lot going on beforehand too.
Yeah.
So I wish there was something we knew more about.
I would say that in my knowledge as a historian, frontier warfare, in the colonial era, brought a level of civilian-based combat that hadn't been seen, I'd argue since like the 1500, like it'd been a hot minute.
Yeah.
So like 100 hadn't been seen for probably 150 years, at least to the level of consistency and brutality that it happens, that would not appear again until the colonial expansions of the late 1800s by the British and the French, when they massacre Native Africans, Native Indonesians, like that kind of thing. But it is a level of warfare that we almost can't process how brutal it is. Case in point, King Philip's War in the 1670s. So even 80 years before this, kills like 10% of the white colonist population of Massachusetts.
Wow.
To put it into perspective, if World War II had been that deadly, we'd have lost 1.2 million people.
Like proportionately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the deadliest wars proportionately to not U.S. history, but American history, like the continent of North America, are in the colonial era.
All right, man. We're changing our review. We're changing it a little bit. Okay. 60 seconds, but instead of a total review, 60 seconds, biggest dope, biggest nope.
Ooh, I like it. You start, so I know what framework like you want. I just
want the thing you liked the most about this movie and the thing you disliked the most about this movie.
Okay, I want to hear your take.
I'll start. All right, here we go. Ready, go. I'd say there's two things that I really like about this. The biggest, I would go soundtrack, but I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna sidestep a little bit. The two ambush scenes I think are done so well.
They are really good.
They catch you off guard, but at the same time, like it's just it really brings you in, and I really like it. Biggest nope. I'm just gonna go with the love story, man. Just the love story. It's so bare bones. It's so by the book. I can't. It's so predictable too. I didn't like it. All right, your turn.
Okay. Biggest dope. For me, it's the melee combat. There's a lot to like about this movie as a historian, or even like a lover of just any historical movie.
Yeah.
But watching combat where Native Americans clearly have organized martial art like type fighting, beautiful. It's hard to find that. Biggest nope. The romance is bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say we'll just go with the romance. I can't think of anything I hate more than the romance right now.
The romance sucks, dude. Everyone knows
I had another one queued
up. It's horrible.
And then when I started thinking about it, I was like, actually, I don't think it's that bad. And to my credit, when I roasted you to my friends who I had watched that movie over the summer, and they were like, that movie's really good. Michelangelo goes, was it the romance? Did he hate the romance? Because I too dislike that. I'm like, well, nobody likes the romance Last Mohicans. That's why I didn't give it.
Forced.
That's for me. If the romance was better or just wasn't there, it's a 9 out of 10. Like it checks all of Kyle's boxes, but it's there. And it's not well done.
It's fine. I don't mind if you have a bad aspect of a movie. You can have an annoying side character, something like that.
Don't make it a main part.
It drives the plot.
Yeah,
because major decisions are forced upon by this terrible,
this just really lightweight romance. Yeah,
it's just bad. All right, man. Next week we're gonna watch a movie about how this big Texas fella is gonna ride a nuke down on top of some enemies.
Yes, Dr. Strangelove, baby.
Yes, sir. We're gonna do a Cold War double feature. Up first is going to be Dr. Strangelove, or what is the full title, or how
I learned to stop loving the bomb.
Stop worrying and start loving the bomb.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Dimitri, we've made a mistake. A very big. Now, Dimitri, I don't want you to get all upset.
There's no fighting in the war room. All right, yeah, we're gonna have fun with this one. I love it.
H2O. God, I love that movie so much.
Yeah, we're gonna have a great time with this. So, we're gonna do Cold War double feature. Up first, Dr. Strangelove. And if they're not out by now, our TikTok channel should be up and going very soon.
So we'll
be able to be looking forward to that. And I guess we could just get those straight over from TikTok to YouTube Shorts as well. So.
TikTok time to rock.
Yeah, so we'll have some new content coming towards you. Hopefully we'll get some more things rolling out here real soon.
We're going to be hippity boppity dippity doo. Am I right?
All right.
I just made a TikTok right there.
I'm going to edit that out. That's what I'm going to do. All right. Thank you all for listening. We will see you next Tuesday.
Bye.